If you're new here, welcome. And if you are returning, welcome back. I'm really glad to be able to see you, or to imagine seeing you. This week's video is going to be a little bit different, a lot different, because we're going to do an interview, which I haven't done on this channel yet. We're going to interview Tracy Hugo, who is the audiobook producer for my audiobook. She is the person whose voice you're going to hear reading, and she is so soothing and just what I was looking for. So I look forward to introducing you to her and being able to get her thoughts, as she has touched every part of this book and has deep personal knowledge of the book at this point. I look forward to hearing what she has to say.
Your things are as powerful.
Tracy Hugo. She is the person whose voice that you're going to hear if you get my book on Audible. It's called In Case I'm Murdered: What You Should Know About Domestic Violence, Stalking, Sexual Abuse, and How to Stay Safe. Tracy has been phenomenal as a part of my team. I could not have done this without her, and I'm going to ask her about why she picked me and my book, but I picked her because she has like the perfect combination of structure and durability and steadiness in life. She has a good marriage and a good home and a good family, and yet the topics in this book have touched her life in some pretty significant ways. And we have been on this very interesting personal journey between the two of us as she's been working through this book, because the book has got a lot of personal stories of mine in it, and it works people through a lot of their personal stuff. And that's been, I think she would say, a part of this journey for her too. And I am so grateful. You can hire all kinds of different people off of Audible, different voices, different backgrounds, but to have somebody whose heart went into this book the way that mine did was priceless. I am so grateful for Tracy, and I'm grateful for you. If you're watching, I'm grateful for you. If you got the book, I'm grateful for you. And if you believe it's a good resource, pass it on. I would be very grateful for that too. So let's get into questions. Number one, Tracy, why did you choose this book? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Hi, April. Thank you for having me participate in just talking about your important work. I, too, am just super honored to have been selected to help put a voice to your words, just the audible portion of your story and the important work that you have spent so much time, getting the message out. My story and why I selected to audition and apply to audio record your book, having come from a background where, yes, you're right, I have a really supportive family and a safe environment as an adult. As a child, that really wasn't the story. My mom had multiple relationships that were extremely abusive, and when I read your title and description of your book, I felt like something was being presented to me to help also give a voice to my mom's story and provide an avenue for information for women who may not be getting the support system that they're needing or wanting or deserving in their community. And I felt like your information was super relevant and honest, and not written by someone who's just simply had the training and wanting to help. It's someone who has lived the life and could speak so much truth to what so many are experiencing. And so I got emotional when I read your description and what it was that you were, the message that you were delivering. And I just knew that I needed to be a part of this journey, and I was so delighted that you selected me. So yes, we have been fortunate to communicate through the process, because not all authors or production companies or rights holders do that with the narrator. And it might the communication, we're fortunate to be able to visit with each other and talk about the message that you really wanted to deliver and the energy that you wanted to explore for this narration part of your book.
Do you feel like the title fits the content? And if not, what title would you give it? This is actually not my first title either, so this was definitely a struggle for me. What are your thoughts since you have gone through every nook and cranny of this book?
Actually, April, I really love the title that you landed on. In Case I'm Murdered. That's the reality, is that unfortunately with abusive relationships, that is a very real possibility. And what you should know about stalking, domestic violence, sexual abuse, and how to stay safe. My only disappointment was that there just wasn't more, maybe I'm hoping you'll do a second book, because there's always more information to be had. But I think that the content that you wrote about and the title that you selected really encompasses just the whole breadth of what your book is about.
From your perspective as a reader of the book, what was my purpose for writing it? What was the message or the idea that I was really trying to get across in this book?
Oh boy, the message, April. You really just have a way of speaking to the reader to say, I understand what you're going through. I'll share my story with you in hopes that it will help you in your situation and keep you safer, keep your children safer, learn some tools along the way so that some of the decisions aren't repeated to end up in a similar situation after possibly leaving a current abusive situation. But really, I felt, April, that you were putting yourself on the line to help protect others, and that was apparent throughout each chapter, sharing your personal story, how your life correlation really added up to each of your chapters. And it's risky to share your story because you just really never know what the abuser is still capable of years later. And I felt as though you were taking on this additional risk for yourself in order to help protect others. And I felt like that was you were speaking from your heart because you genuinely want to help someone else who might find themselves in a similar situation.
Who would you say that this book is written for?
April, that's a really great question. I feel that this book is not only written for someone in an abusive relationship currently, but someone who might come from a family where there has been abuse, and for young women who are concerned about repeating behaviors that we often will do in families of abusive relationships, or maybe a dad who's abusive, or your mom's partners who've been abusive, or even an uncle or a grandparent who has been abusive. So I would say it's great for women who want to learn more about how to avoid and what signs to look for. It's great for the woman who's in an abusive relationship currently, or coming out of an abusive relationship, or who had been in one years ago and afraid to date again, and just to learn more about herself. And sometimes when you're in the thick of it, a relationship that's not healthy, it's hard to see all of those signs. and when you're not in a relationship and just considering starting another relationship, I feel like this is a great resource. Also for communities who are looking to support someone who's in an abusive relationship, to help them understand really what's happening. You know, we on the outside want to be of assistance, and the more that we understand what someone might be going through, possibly the better we are equipped to help them process through that. And I must say, you know, as someone who is looking to be supportive, never give up on your friend or loved one who is in an abusive relationship. They need you during that time when you're ready to give up because you feel like you might have the answer for them and they're not doing exactly what you recommend. Recognize that they're trying and it's hard, and not to give up on them, because it takes a community, and they will need you to be there as a support system. So I just feel like the book really can be for anyone, just to be there as a great resource.
Okay, was it difficult or easy to read? You can answer both in a writing style and emotionally, because in a writing style I tried to make it very easy to read for everybody, but I'd like to know if you feel like I actually accomplished that. And then probably one of the most common bits of feedback that I got early on in this book is people would read the first part of the first chapter and then be like, I can't. It's too hard. It's emotionally too hard of content, and they just wouldn't read anymore. And I'm like, you gotta read it. It's a whole lot easier to read about it than it is to experience it. So if you're gonna get the wisdom, you gotta read the book. What are your thoughts?
For sure. Absolutely, you've got to read the book. It is tough content. And it's hard for people to hear the reality of what really, truly happens behind closed doors in an abusive situation. You know, I would say that if folks are finding it hard to read or to listen, go slow. You know, take a little bit at a time. Allow yourself to feel and to understand that this is real. This is not just a make-believe story of something that an author has dreamed up, and you don't like that style of reading. This is the real deal. And so I would say be kind to yourself when listening and reading. If you find that the content is difficult to process, just take a little at a time. Visit with your friends about it and talk about why is it difficult. Have an understanding of what part of the information is difficult. I didn't find it difficult to read because it was so real. I honestly couldn't finish it fast enough because I felt like the information was so good and so honest, and I wanted to learn more and more about your story, that I had a hard time not listening or not reading it quicker. I love the layout, that you give a clear definition as to what is coming up, and that you had a pattern for each chapter so that we would know what to expect. You would give the information, you would provide your resources for the investigative work that you did with your research, and then you would provide that my life correlation and how it related to your world, which, you know, I felt validated you as the author to share your personal story and give guidance for the rest of us, and then of course the key points of each chapter. I really appreciated you giving that, because sometimes those of us who have gone through trauma have a hard time retaining information. And I love that you follow up each chapter with, some of those key points just to remind us, what did we just read? So I loved that it had a good flow with each chapter and we knew what to expect.
Would you say that the book is well researched?
Oh, was it well researched? I hate to do research. This is my husband's forte, not mine. I felt... I just don't know that if you could have done any more research. I felt like you really just found qualified, relevant folks who were professionals, but also stories that brought, in the media, that really brought kind of the core of the heart to your book. So yeah, girl, I would say that you really researched the heck out of additional information.
What was your favorite part of the book?
Okay, my favorite part of the book is my life correlation sections. I just felt like it was necessary to be in the book. And I have two favorites, actually. Your guides in the back, to be able to outline and identify if you're needing to leave a situation, providing some of the outline, because it's can feel completely overwhelming to even consider leaving an abusive relationship, and to know what you could be up against. You were honest about that process and how scary and how just a time that can be completely unsafe. So I appreciate your honesty, but really my life correlation and the safety plans were by far my favorite pieces of the book.
And what was your least favorite part?
Least favorite part of the book? That it ended. I'm ready for the second one to come out, because this is a really big world of information, and I'm hoping that there's one for children specifically. Also, I'm hoping there might be another one for your support system, and for the folks the loved ones and family members, friends who are there as your support team. How do we best support someone and also take care of ourselves in supporting them? So I'm hoping there's two more books that might come out. So yeah, the book ended and I wanted more.
I've been really looking forward to this question for you. I wrote this book intending for people to take action on the things that they learned. Did reading this affect your life personally, and how? And of course I know that it has, because we've already talked about it, but I'm excited for you to share with other people.
That's an emotional question. I am fortunate to have also been a survivor of as a child, going through domestic violence, watching my mom go through it, and escaping a handful of times, not just once, but a handful of times. This book helped me recognize, as a 48-year-old woman, that I now hold the power and the strength to have a conversation with the 10-year-old little girl that I was, the 12-year-old little girl that I was, the 15-year-old, the 18-year-old young woman, the 21-year-old woman, of a mom who survived domestic violence in sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, financial abuse, controlling relationships. April, your book gave me, it kind of just sparked for me and turned on a light that said, I can now tell this little girl who was scared, who was hurting, who wanted to protect, I can now tell her, you're free from that responsibility. It is not your job anymore to fix anything. you're okay, you survived. And so your book really gave me the strength to be able to do that. Your book also helped me have tough conversations with my mom, and talk a lot more in greater detail, some of the things that she experienced that little girls shouldn't know. And my mom really protected me from a lot of things that I was unaware of. And now as an adult woman, wanting to support her in this healing process, this book was a gift to our family to be honest and be confident about having additional conversation and providing a safer space to discuss some of the information in your book, to say, hey, these are the things that I'm reading in the book, and have more empathy for what my mom went through and just how hard it was to leave. When, as a little girl, thinking to myself, why can't we leave, Mom? Why can't we just leave? And it's just not that easy. So your book helped me have more empathy for my mom, for my aunt, for my grandmother, and all the generational relationships that we had in our family who were in abusive relationships. Just have a greater understanding on why it can be so difficult to make different choices. And so your book just gave me more strength and allows me to support my mom in a different and healthier way. So the other way in which your book really influenced our household is I have 3 teenage boys. And although I've always talked to my boys about consent and being respectful, in reading this book, it just offered up so many opportunities to have additional conversation with my children and my husband. My children and my husband have no experience with abuse at all. They're deeply, deeply respectful, but also because I would dare say they're also privileged because they haven't had to know about what it feels like, what it looks like. And so this was a great time to continue to educate them on what families go through, how fortunate we are that they don't have a first-hand experience with domestic violence. And although I've shared some information with them on what I went through as a child growing up in that environment, just sharing some of the personal experiences, the stories in your book, how sometimes people aren't believed, or how survivors will feel the need to protect the abuser, to justify the behaviors and why. And so it's really allowed for additional conversation, not only within my family structure, but also on social media. And, it's a subject that people just don't want to touch. It's uncomfortable. And I say that's too bad. Sometimes we have to have conversations that are tough. It's the only way that we can grow. And the more information that I share, the more my community will understand that this is a true and real, it's not somebody else's house. This is your friends, this is your family, people that you know and love go through this, and to be aware and to ask questions, to get involved, to not ignore. And so your book, I always knew that there would be a time in my life where it would be important for me to talk about the abuse in our family. And your book broke the chains on that for us.
Okay, and would you share a favorite quote from it and tell us why it stood out to you? Or a couple if you've got them.
I know that I'm not going to get the quote exactly without looking at the material, but you talked about a case where a woman lost her life, and where there's other women who have gone through domestic violence, abusive relationships, and they've lost their lives. And you indicated that you couldn't save their life or lives, that you're hoping that this book will save somebody's life, possibly the life of the listener. And I believe that your book, your stories, your research will absolutely help save lives of other women. There's just not enough material, resources available, and this is one resource that can provide some anonymity to someone who might be going through this, and be able to listen privately without having a physical book that they have to hide. Sometimes we have to do things in private and not where other people are aware of it. And I think that your book provides one of those resources that if someone truly has to seek information to save her life, that your, by way of delivery in an audiobook, gives them that option.
In your opinion, what makes this book an important work? Like, what does the potential reader out there who's listening to this or watching this video, what do they stand to gain from this book?
They're not alone. And I think that that's part of the message that they will hear, is that somebody truly understands what they're going through. This is real. I mean, people just don't want to believe that, communities don't want to believe that this kind of violence is happening in their neighborhood or in their family. And you are just honest. You're willing to stick your neck out on the line for others to say, this is real. I believe you. I know that it's happening. Let me share more information to help you process through, to help save your life. And I think that those who have been through any kind of abuse will be able to say, oh my gosh, she gets me. She understands. That's my story. That's me too. This is, yes, when you say that's why I stayed, and talk about stories on why women don't leave a relationship. Yeah, that's why I'm staying. That's exactly why. And then you give them hope to say, oh my gosh, I might be able to survive this and have a plan and be successful outside of this relationship. And you don't sugarcoat it. You don't say this is going to be easy, or you're going to find that it's just like, you should have done it yesterday because it's easy. You don't make it sound like this is a cakewalk. They're already so strong in surviving through what they've gone through. And if they can pull from that same strength, apply the information that you're providing, giving themselves hope, it's super relatable. And I think that's what's important as well, for people to be able to read your book or listen to the book and say, okay, she gets me, she understands, and this is relevant to my life.
What parts of the book were most impactful to you? We may have already answered this question with your what did you like best, but sometimes the things that impact me are not always the good things. So they're not something I would consider my favorite part, but most impactful?
Because abuse can oftentimes be generational, some people may not realize that they're in a relationship that is abusive or controlling because it's normalized, and that's just what they've come to expect. And so I feel as though some of the personal accounts that you shared, either your story or stories of other women, may help identify for some women or families to say, oh my gosh, I'm actually living in an abusive relationship, when maybe they were listening to it just because they thought they were going to be supporting a friend or because they were curious. But to help identify when abuse is happening in a home, sometimes because it's been happening generationally, they don't actually recognize it. So I trained as a women's self-defense instructor, and that's one of the things that we learned in class, is that sometimes people, once they read the information and hear more, they are wide-eyed, recognizing that they've been or were raised in an environment that was not healthy, that didn't honor them. And all women deserve to be honored and protected and safe and in a loving environment. And I feel like your book gives everyone permission to recognize that for themselves, to say you don't deserve to be hurt in any way, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially. You don't deserve to live in an environment and be controlled, that you're capable of living in a space that is loving and kind and supportive. And so your book provides that hope for and recognition for so many.
This one's just kind of for fun, but how did this book change you? Do you have a new perspective about something? Did you learn something that you didn't already know about a topic or about yourself? Has your attitude or your behavior changed in any way? Just share one thing.
You can't learn more about this important material, this important subject, and then just sit quietly at home. You have to just share and educate as much as you possibly can. If it, turns a light bulb on for somebody, awesome. If it's helping somebody, awesome. I have a really big community around me, and so I just can't stay silent about the abuse that others face anymore. It's not an option to stay silent. People want to sweep it under the rug because it's uncomfortable. And it has made me feel more brave to say to the world, I was raised in an environment that was unhealthy, and I survived it. I not only survived it, but am successful outside of that as well. And let's talk about how life can look different. So a quick story on by speaking out more. I graduated with a woman whose child is in a relationship they're abusive. We lost contact, after high school, but because of Facebook, we have stayed in contact a little bit. And she reached out to me to ask if I would be willing just to talk to her daughter about some of my hobbies that I have, because she has said she has always admired watching some of the work that I've been doing, but now specifically because of this book, she decided it was time to reach out and ask some more questions. And then I had another woman who was really just an acquaintance also reach out because she's struggling with the situation. So what it's doing is it's getting people talking more. It tells them, hey, this is a safe person for me to share my story. And then I can share the book with them as a greater resource because I don't have a lot of answers. I can just provide, information, because your book really is the guide in helping them through that process.
In my opinion, The unique contribution is the fact that it is a self-help book, but it's written by a survivor. Because I've seen lots of different survivors write about their story, which is cathartic and they're getting it out, but it's not really helpful to the other people. And actually, and I may be wrong, there are definitely people that want to read other people's story and feel validated in that, but I didn't. I didn't want to read more stories about abuse. I wanted to know what to do about my situation. And like, I feel bad for the other people that write stories about their abuse. I would feel bad about them, but I had enough abuse in my own life. I didn't want to go there mentally and emotionally. But on the other hand, I would read self-help books and safety books and stuff, and they're not written from the perspective of a survivor. Most of the time, oftentimes, they're written from a psychologist or a scientist or a police officer or whatever, but not a survivor, not somebody who's lived it. So I wanted to be able to put the two of those together in this book. Yes, there's some of my stories in there because some people learn better by stories. They don't do terribly well with just information. And then there are other people that deal better with information. And so I put them both in there together so that you could get the information and you could see it as a survivor and as somebody who understands where you're at. What, if anything, is the unique contribution that this book makes, in your opinion?
I definitely feel the strength of your book got its validity through doing research and talking about, providing information from professionals in the field, but also it's coupled with your personal experience and it's not just a story about a survivor, but it provides the resource material on how, what, when, where. It provides all of those answers to questions on, okay, well, that's great that you did it, but how do I apply this to my life? How do I get to where you're at and be safe again, or learn how to be safe? So you've provided the personal story with the research to make it more of a complete journal, resource guide, and a plan. How do we make a plan for the next step? You provide that as well.
Would you rate how well you feel like I addressed the different things in this book? Like, were they adequately covered, or is there things that you wish I would have explained more?
I think for the bullet points that you identified in covering in the book, you gave a really nice, you gave each chapter the content that I think it needed and deserved. Again, just can't wait for additional books to come out to talk about children, survivors of, and how to support and navigate the waters. One of the terms that people will use are that children are resilient, and I've got to be honest, I really don't like that statement, because children are also survivors. They are put in situations that they don't ask for, and they are taught to survive through that, but I don't believe that they're resilient. The children are affected, and just as I think people who go through domestic violence relationships or a family situation where there's trauma, I think that the adults need to seek help for that. I also believe that children need help as well, not just, oftentimes people might get counseling and may not provide counseling for the children. I would love to see more information for the children and how we can help them and assist in their needs, surviving through trauma. And then the other book of, how a community can be supportive through the process.
Are you glad that you read it?
Oh, am I ever glad that I read it? Okay, I will say my least favorite was the law section, because that was a lot of information to process through. That was just my least, and I understand the need to put it in the book. But yes, super glad that I read it, and super glad to have gotten through that law section the way that we did. So thank you for trusting in me to narrate this book.
Would you read more books from me in the future and produce them, or just read them for your own? Why or why not?
Yeah, you bet. I would definitely read and or narrate any additional material. I think that you take time to share the relevant bits of information, pulling from your own personal experience, but also, the breadth of others in the community at large. And just, I'm excited. Don't take too long getting more material out, because inquiring readers want to read your next book.
Would you recommend this book to a friend or a stranger? Why or why not? Hopefully the answer is yes, because hopefully you wouldn't have continued reading the book and producing the book if you thought it was terrible. But
I love sharing about the book and talking to my friends about it and to my acquaintances and my community. I would do the book all over again, and I hope that this shows that I'm so delighted to read the important work that you put your heart and soul into, and I would do it all over again.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I really, really, really appreciate you and your time.
April, thank you for trusting me to share the words that you so carefully put together. I'm just certain that your fans and your old fans and your new fans that are yet to come will appreciate your information and just how heartfelt and your being brave to share your story, because it would have been just easy for you to walk away and try to forget about and just hope the best for somebody else who might have be going through the same experience that you did. Your book really touched me. It was a part of our home for a handful of months as we navigated through getting this audiobook completed. And I'm really proud of the work that we did. Grateful, and I'm also hopeful that your work, our work, will reach women who are just finding themselves in need for more information, for hope, for a plan, and for a place that supports them through their journey to safety. Thank you for honoring me with the opportunity to narrate your book. And thanks for having me.
Next week, we're going to have a really cool treat. Tracy's mom is actually going to come and interview with me so that we can hear her perspective as Tracy's mom, but also as a survivor of multiple different domestic violence relationships and a near-death experience. Thank you for watching. Until I see you again, stay safe.